The champagne flutes were given to the happy couple who always played in the dirt. Clinked around me while my sister Tamara's voice, brimming with that, reverberated across the reception area. The laughing that followed was accompanied by a certain sweetness that could shatter glass. As 200 wedding guests turned to stare at me and Peyton, I felt like I was slapped and my cheeks burned. My name is Bethany, and I should have known Tamara wouldn't let my wedding go without it, because that was meant to be the happiest day of my life. She was there to remind everyone of my specific position in the family hierarchy. As I sat in my grandmother's modified gown, she held court at the head table, looking stunning in her luxury bridesmaid dress. Bridal gown while attempting to hide my mother Rossie's smile and Bethany Honey's tears. People were obviously observing as she snarled from next to me, her immaculately manicured fingernails pushing into my arm. They had been keeping an eye on me my entire life, anticipating which Blair sister would make a mistake. The first spoiler alert was Peyton's rough palm found mine beneath the table, and it was always me. When I gazed at him, his brown eyes were moving in soft circles with my thumb on my palm. Calm and kind, totally unfazed by the snickers that reverberate all around us, let them giggle, he murmured, leaning close enough that his breath tickled my ear. We know our possessions. God, I cherished this man despite his little layer of dust from the Yes, he had insisted on inspecting the irrigation system on the day of our wedding, which is why he had been working in the fields that morning. I still find it hard to believe that he was more genuine than everyone else in this room full of press suits and phony smiles. Erin, my youngest sister, whispered as she slid into the vacant chair next to me at the age of 27, marrying a farmer. I'm a diplomatic person who always tries to patch up the family's rifts. Mom has been taking antacids all week, so I think it's romantic. Thank you for the motivational speech, I replied as I watched Tamara work the crowd as if she were vying for office at age 31. She had mastered the technique of the husband of the golden child, Stanford MBA, who worked in a Manhattan corner office and discussed market volatility at dinner parties while wearing thousands of suits, which isn't. Erin swiftly clarified what I meant when she remarked, "Ladies and gentlemen, here is my father Donald's." He stood at the stage with his silver hair well styled, and his voice roared over the microphone, breaking through the commotion. Designed his facial expressions to be something between unhappy and resigned. My stomach fell as I realized that this couldn't be good because my daughter Bethany has always been. He started saying something different, and I saw Tamara grinning behind her champagne glass. While her sisters concentrated on their jobs and accomplishments, Bethany took a different, easier route. Peyton's hand tightened over my as simpler hung in the air like a verdict. She has decided to wed Peyton, a hands-on worker who is aware of the because of diligence. Donald's pause felt purposeful and well calculated. We hope they have a happy and modest life together. The applause was courteous but indifferent. I saw my mother using a tissue to dab at her eyes, but I wasn't sure if they were happy or sad tears. Peyton remarked softly, his voice level, Dad is really laying in on thick. He's been practicing that speech for weeks, I responded, observing Tamara lean to the insult cloaked in wedding wishes. I didn't have to hear the words to know they were laughing when she went over to whisper something to her husband Elijah. To me, this was my family, who ought to have joined me in celebration. We're instead viewing my wedding as a memorial service for all of my accomplishments, including my college degree. My teaching credentials, degree, and small business selling organic fruit were all rejected because I'd opted for love above prestige. You know what? I said, getting to my feet so quickly that the sound of a chair scraping the floor broke through the commotion of the reception area, and all eyes turned to me. I raised my water glass once more since, of course, I was too sensible to squander any more. I uttered my voice as I glanced straight at my sister to family while toasting with champagne. Tamara's smile wavered as she carried the message across the abruptly quiet room and to discover who truly has your support when it counts. For a brief moment, but she bounced back fast, raising her glass as the toast felt like a line to the rest of the crowd. As I sat there, I noticed that I was drawn in the sand, although I doubt anyone else did. Peyton leaned down and whispered, "That's my girl." I had no idea what he was talking about. I had no idea how foretelling those statements would prove to be 3 years later when I stood in Tamara's casserole dish, which likely cost less than her doormat, is displayed in her marble-tiled foyer during the annual Blair family. I could immediately hear the classic soundtrack of my childhood clinking glasses as the cookout got underway. My mother's words echoed as I laughed and practiced the delicate art of one-upmanship masquerading as conversation. We were just discussing the Hamptons house Tamara and Elijah when you stepped onto the immaculate back patio. They were Tamara, of course, as she walked up in a flowing white sundress that likely exceeded my weekly grocery budget, but her smile was as well kept as her landscaping. "Oh, you brought food," she remarked, glancing at my casserole dish as if it might be contaminated. "How considerate of me to put the green bean casserole on the catering menu. Is it the table next to the expertly prepared buffet from our garden?" Organic Elijah showed up next to his wife Martini, holding his immaculate polo shirt. It might sever paper or simply leave the inquiry hanging in midair while a number of as my relatives and friends turned to listen, I could feel the same warmth rising up my neck. Peyton murmured softly as he stepped up next to me, "It's homegrown." His trousers were. He was wearing a plain cotton button-down shirt, clean but worn, next to Elijah's designer. He appeared to have stumbled in from another universe in every way. Elijah gave an enthusiastic nod, asking how the agricultural thing was doing. "We're doing great while playing in the dirt," I replied, leveling my voice. Tamara chuckled when she heard that the farm had been lucrative for the past 2 years, sounding like wind chimes during a hurricane. "Elijah just finished a deal worth more than your small farm likely makes in 10 years, honey, that's adorable." Father interrupted as he was approaching with his bourbon. "I've been wanting to inquire about your farming endeavors while. Donald, do you have any plans to take your life to the next level?" Mother cautioned, but her tone indicated that she was interested in hearing the response as well. "We're glad," Peyton stated, "that the work is." Elijah swirled his martini once again, emphasizing that it was excellent, honest labor. "However, I must admit that it's like watching a nature documentary when I see you two at family gatherings." The gathering surrounding us laughed as we observed the unassuming farmers in their natural environment, and I caught sight of Erin WSE from across the. "At least we sleep well at night," I murmured, but she remained silent on the balcony. Elijah's smile intensified as the words escaped before I could stop them. "What's that meant to mean?" "Nothing," I said in a voice as sharp as a glass cutter when Tamara questioned. "Just that physical work makes you tired." But the damage was done, I'd say. Everyone could sense that someone had crossed an unseen line. My mother responded, well, with artificial brightness, "Who wants to see the?" The gang split off and followed Tamara to the newest addition to her real estate enterprise, the new pool home. I went to follow, but Peyton grabbed my arm and said, "Make sure we didn't leave the truck. I'm going to check on it." I knew he merely wanted air, so I put the windows down. These events were more taxing for him than. While he stood there helpless to protect his wife from being tormented by her own family, he allowed it to happen. "I'll come," I answered, "with you," but he shook his head. "Stay and enjoy your family." Carried weight, which we both knew, and I ended up beside the pool by myself, observing. The sound of laughter faded as the light reflected off water that most likely cost more to maintain than we spent on food. From the tour of the pool house, and I pondered what it would be like to be a part of that group rather than constantly on. Erin stated, "They're being terrible today," as she appeared next to. I had 2 glasses of wine today, and I was thankful for each one. "This is merely. Tuesday isn't usually like this for them, isn't it?" I turned to face her. Erin remained quiet. "When was the last time someone in this family inquired about my life without doing it as a pretext for a joke? Things have been tight lately because of Elijah's work, I mean. I've been anxious about things I probably shouldn't do tomorrow." Erin, before speaking, she looked around and leaned closer to some of his. "Large investments haven't been performing well, and Tamara has been remarking that they need to change their way of living." Tamara's words sliced like a razor over the terrace before I could reply. I stepped back to the group wineglass in order to have Bethany settle a dispute for us. "We were only talking about career paths, Tamara, and I'm already bracing myself. I told everyone that you've truly found your purpose, even if not everyone can," as she smiled predatorily. "Manage the cognitive demands of subsistence farming, as it is known." Although I had to inquire, the group laughed directly at Q as she kept moving closer. "Have you ever wondered what you could have achieved if you had put in the necessary effort?" Rather than accepting this charming tiny existence, the words struck like a blow to the body. "Takes away all of my doubts and insecurities regarding my decisions." I opened my mouth, encased in my sister's exquisitely manicured brutality, to reply, but the day wasn't over. "I'm only stating that some of us have higher dreams than. Real life occurs on Wall Street, not in whatever little bubble you've built, and that includes county fairs and vegetable gardens. For example, even those who had been laughing were silenced by the ensuing hush. Appeared uneasy, so I steadied my hand and sat down with my wine glass. Yes, I did say in a hushed voice that real life does happen, and it does so in various ways. You never know when I'll notice the crack 6 months after the cookout. Beginning to demonstrate that it began with missed calls that my parents, who used to check, abruptly went radio with weekly updates on Tamara's most recent accomplishments. When I did hear them, they were quiet and their chats sounded forced, as if they were reading from a screenplay, with half the missing pages. How is Tamara doing? I inquired during one really uncomfortable phone conversation with my mom. Tamara is constantly working on something, as you may know. The ensuing lull was so long that a truck could pass through it. Listen, honey, Elijah is all right. I have to run because your father is calling. Click, I scowled as I looked at the phone. In 30 years, my mother had never cut a. Briefly put, unless someone was actually bleeding, the next warning sign appeared during Aaron's birthday dinner, where we met. My first hint that the Blair family did nothing was a little, unpretentious Italian restaurant downtown. Fancy, where are all the others? As Aaron slid into the booth across from me, I inquired. Mom and Dad had something come up, Peyton and I said, and Tamara and Elijah are coping with work-related matters. Work-related matters on a Saturday evening? Aaron picked at her breadstick, avoiding my eyes. Items have been complicated recently. How complicated should I be, Aaron? I leaned forward to see what was going on, and she looked around the restaurant as if to look for spies before lowering her voice. Elijah's business is having serious problems with an investment plan. I felt a slight flutter in my chest as that slid sideways. It wasn't quite satisfaction, but it was near. Shoved the emotion away because I was ashamed of how awful they had to list the Hamptons house and boat for sale, and Tamara has been phoning relatives to ask for. The flutter grew stronger, so I drank some water to cover my face. Have they requested money from you? Not yet, Peyton said softly, but I believe that's just because I don't have any to offer. Aaron eventually looked me in the eye and said, they haven't called you, have they? No, I replied, but after. Once more, we're just ordinary farmers. What do we know about actual money, Aaron? I was there, remembering the front row seat to the Tomorrow, and I cringed when you heard about that. She has been acting differently lately, becoming agitated and yelling at everyone, including the. I suppose we ate in relative silence after that, but I suppose golden children have terrible days. Felt Peyton observing me. He knew me well enough to identify the thoughts racing through my mind. Later that week, we were picking tomatoes in the late summer when my phone called. Hello, unknown number. Bethany, your mother's voice was unsteady and older than I remembered. Are you? I hope all is well with you, my love. I'm just exhausted. Could you? We need to talk about something as a family, so stop by the house this weekend. The phrase made me shiver, Blair family, because there is something we must. Talking as a family was never good news. It would be better if we chat face to face. Are you able to come Saturday at approximately 2? I glanced at Peyton, who was piling tomatoes into crates while acting as though no one was listening. His shoulders were tense, so I suppose I should be too. Bring everything you want, just you and Peyton. Naturally, the line died, leaving me alone. Peyton inquired without searching for sounds when I was glued to my phone during a family gathering. Regarding what she wouldn't say, he straightened and wiped his hands on his slacks. However, considering what Aaron informed us, they would demand money from us, so it wasn't a. I laid in bed that night, staring at the question, which we both knew was true. Ceiling as Peyton's breathing calmed down next to me, a larger part of me. After being treated like the family letdown they were for years, I was nearly excited, but I didn't want to admit it. Going to require something from me at last. The irony was that all those remarks about our modest existence and our time spent playing in the dirt, and now they were planning to visit the farm with hatred. Girl they had ridiculed for decades, but there was another aspect of me that still. I felt ill at the memory of being 7 years old and fervently wishing Tamara would let me play in her games. Saturday morning's dismal and rainy arrival matched my emotions, and Peyton was uncharacteristically silent as we dealt with my family's suffering. His jaw was stiff, but his hands remained firm on the wheel as he drove to my parents' house. As we entered the well-known driveway, he continued, remember that you don't owe them anything. Anything. Beth, you have a tender heart, and they know how to turn that against you. I gazed at my childhood home, with its immaculate shutters and flawless yard. It was less intimidating and smaller than I remembered, but as we walked, my phone rang up the front steps with an emergency text from an unidentified number. Please attend to the family gathering, we need you. Tamara, the same sister who'd asked for my assistance after years of telling me I would never amount to anything, so I put the phone back in my pocket, and, with my pulse pounding against my ribs, rang the doorbell to discover what was really there. When we arrived at the farm girl's door, life appeared to be like this. The living room felt like a courthouse. As if they had been preparing this ambush for weeks, everyone was already there, positioned in a cautious semicircle. Tamara sat on the edge of the armchair, her designer, while her parents sat on the couch, looking older than I remembered. Elijah stood by the window with his back to it, her garments disheveled and her normally flawless poise cracked around the edges. With our hands stuffed deep into his pockets, Aaron was the only one who appeared truly uneasy. Bethany Peyton, my father remarked, pointing to the ottoman where she was sitting and giving me an apologetic look. 2 chairs were obviously set up for us, and they said, "Thank you for coming." As soon as we sat down, I felt like I was on. I broke the heavy pause by saying, "So, what's this about?" "My mom. We wanted to chat to you about the anxious behavior she had as a child of twisting her wedding band." I was amazed when Elijah eventually turned around in the family issue. Given how weary he appeared, his arrogant assurance had vanished, and in its stead was a desperate, irate Kutta. "You know exactly what situation Elijah is in," he yelled. "Act Bethany, Tamara." "No, I'm done pretending," she said, warning, but her voice lacked the authority it usually possessed. "Proceeded to tell you about our issues, but didn't your sister mention the investments?" I looked at Aaron, who was. "She said you were experiencing some trouble, and she was examining her hands as if they were the universe's secrets." Challenges. Elijah laughed bitterly, which is one way to describe what. According to Elijah, my father mentioned that the family is having some financial difficulties. Problems, important ones, and the question lingered in the air. Like smoke, my mom eventually said, "We could lose everything." The words struck the room like a physical blow, despite my suspicions being validated. Peyton inquired softly about the house, the savings, and everything was different. According to my father, Elijah made some investments in retirement accounts. I looked at Elijah on our behalf for investments that didn't work out. "I'm sorry to hear that," I responded cautiously, "but I'm not sure why you're staring at me like this was somehow my fault." "Instructing us. Because we require your assistance," Tamara leaned forward, for. My sister was staring at me with what may have been desperation for the first time in my life. "Our assistance?" My father responded plainly, "Your land, the farm needs you to sell it." "Excuse me, it's the sole untied asset in the family." It hit me like a slap. My mother clarified her voice as she begged, "If you sell the land, we can settle the debts and start afresh." I sensed Peyton's hand slipping into mine. "Warm and steady, you want us to sell our house. I told you to take your time and correct your errors." Elijah's voice rose as he stated, "It's not about mistakes, it's about family." The words came out more sharply than I had planned, but I'm doing the right thing. Asking your family to give up everything they have worked for you is wrong. Tamara stood up for her. "Finally losing all composure because you're acting like you're playing house on a patch of dirt. This is real life. Consequences, real repercussions for the decisions you made, for our family," my mother sobbed. Gushing down her cheeks, "Family helps family." Where was this sense of familial devotion? I got to my feet with trembling hands after you ridiculed everything we had constructed for years. "Where did you treat Peyton like dirt under your shoes?" My father said, but his tone lacked conviction. "Hey, don't you want to discuss fairness? Let's discuss all families. Event where you treated us like charity cases by making remarks about our modest, everyday lives each time you took action. That we were humiliating you simply by being Bethany Aaron, but I was on a roll right now, but when your golden boy plans abruptly fail. Remember, we're family all of a sudden, and this isn't about the past," Tamara remarked. "This is about now, about survival, your survival built on," she said in a panicked tone. Elijah burst our sacrifice, which was only dirt. The ensuing silence was terrible, with weeds and nothing you could purchase from another farm anywhere. Even he appeared to understand that he had gone too far, and Peyton got up slowly. "Controlled and methodical, I think," he whispered softly, "we should go." "Hold on," my mom said, "just give it some thought. We're not asking you to make a decision right now. My father's voice. Difficult, the creditors won't wait much longer, and we must have a response by Monday. You're giving us 2 days to determine whether to destroy. I glanced at him on Monday. You're being dramatic, Tamara murmured, but her voice was trembling. Our lives for you. We're discussing people's lives here, including my daughter's future, but it's just property. She shot back, you don't understand what's at stake. What about our future? You don't have children. The implied insinuation that our childless marriage is like a bodily blow somehow diminished the value of our life and hung between our jaws. Peyton. We're leaving, I murmured as his palms clenched into fists. My mother called, Bethany, please, as we were about to go. I grabbed my bag and turned around. I said, I'll think about it one last time, looking at these people who shared my blood but felt like strangers. You should also consider the types of people who urge their loved ones to sacrifice all for them. Protect them from their own errors. While we were walking to my father's truck, voice followed us out. After you understand what you owe us, Bethany, and all we have done for you, you will come to your senses. Peyton's hand was on the vehicle door for years, but he paused, causing his knuckles to ache. I said what we owe them loudly enough for everyone to hear, white against the metal. Nobody had a response to the question of what we specifically owe them after 30 years of being treated like the family disappointment. The drive home was quiet save for the crunching of gravel, so they weren't willing to speak it out. Peyton's knuckles were still white on the steering wheel beneath our tires, and I could almost feel his rage. As we arrived into our driveway, I gazed at our small farmhouse, where my family lives, with waves of light emanating from him. Wanted us to make sacrifices as if they were insignificant, but the dusk light made the meadows appear serene and lovely, and everything I've ever desired is right here. I must show you something, Peyton said as we exited the truck. I don't care what they think, I'm not selling. He made his way to the barn, knowing that this was not about selling. I should have told you things years ago, but I followed him in confusion because of his deliberate stride. He led me to the rear of the barn, where he kept his belongings, rather than responding. He went straight to a filing cabinet that I had never seen him open in the office, even though I had been there 1,000 times. Pulling out a thick manila folder, he said, "Sit down. You're frightening me, Peyton. I'm attempting to show you who we truly are, not to frighten you." He opened the folder and spread papers over his desk. What we actually are. I leaned forward and looked closely at the legal documents. Financial statements for patents that included figures that left my head spinning. This is the irrigation system, he stated, indicating a patent document. System I pieced together using spare parts that we use on the North Field. Go through the headline. Peyton Stone receives patent for advanced precision agriculture irrigation system. Patented 3 years ago, and farms throughout the Midwest are currently using it. Took out a second document. This is the soil analysis program that I've been working on, which gives us precisely when and where to submit a new patent application and document using Peyton's. I want to know the name at the top, so I'm not sure why you didn't tell me. Before I began discussing anything, he sat down to make sure I wanted to create something tangible. Down across from me, his countenance serious. Beth, our patch of soil isn't just a farm, it's a research and development facility. Everything we plant here, every system we test, it's all part of something bigger. My head was whirling. How much bigger? He pulled out a financial statement and slid it over the desk. The numbers at the bottom made me blink hard, confident I was misreading them. Is that, are we worth the enterprise is worth that? Stone Agricultural Technologies. I started it 5 years ago, shortly after we got married, using our yard as the trial ground for everything. I looked at the documents and then at my husband. You've been managing a pretty quiet tech company for the entire time. The majority of our clients only know that the systems function, they have no idea where the innovations originate, so why retain? Peyton was quiet for a while, so I kept it a secret so my relatives would believe we were simply farmers. I wanted to see who they truly were, so I took the time to arrange the papers into tidy piles. When he finally responded, I wanted to see how they'd treat us when they thought we had nothing to offer. It struck me as a physical assault that you were aware of for a long time and how they saw us, but you chose to ignore it. I allowed them to reveal their actual selves, and yes, I endured every getting together with family and believing that we were the poor relations. Beth, do you have any? Imagine how it felt to sit there while they made fun of all we had constructed, wondering that perhaps they were correct and that perhaps I had thrown my life away. Peyton extended for my hand, but I pulled back. You let me doubt myself. You let me believe we were struggling while you were sitting on all this. We were never struggling. Our bills were always paid. We Never wanted for anything, that's not the point. I rose up, marching to the window. The key is that I never felt small because you allowed them to do so. Desired that, but you permitted it, and the ensuing silence was burdened with. He murmured more in a hushed voice, and after years of hidden truths, I turned to him once again. The investments in Elijah's business that failed, Peyton withdrew another. He placed a wager against Stone Agricultural Technologies in the folder. What do you mean that he shorted our stock? The phrases didn't make sense at first. Invested the money of his clients, including your parents' retirement fund, in the gamble that our business would fail, and I retreated into. He lost their money when the chair and the entire scene came into focus. He was risking every penny against us because he was so certain that anything related to. He bet everything on our failure, which meant that simple farmers had to be useless. Aaron's text message on my desk buzzed, saying, "They're coming to the farm tomorrow. Dad insists they won't." I gave Peyton the message, and after he read it, he glanced up at. He said, "Let them come, good," and I gave him something that may have been expectation. "They will demand that we sell everything, Peyton, and they will discover the truth." He rose up, putting all of the papers back in their folders and wondering what you intend to do. His smile was harsh, strange, and genuine, and I intend to give them exactly what they've been requesting for all these years. Education regarding our identity and value, followed by what we observe if. I glanced closely at my husband to see if they were truly family or if they were just folks who shared your DNA. I came to see a side of him that I had never knew existed. The peaceful farmer was still there, but there was something more going on beneath it. Harsher and more calculated. "You've been preparing for this for a while, haven't you?" He looked directly into my eyes, and for the first time since I'd. "Peyton seems dangerous, so I suppose we'll find out tomorrow." Came like a storm front, with 3 vehicles entering our driveway at precisely 2 o'clock and causing dust clouds to settle. I watched from the kitchen window as they climbed out of my parents' gloomy, pricey paint jobs. Tamara. Elijah gripped a leather portfolio and adjusted his tie as if he were going from a farmland to a boardroom. Even Tiffany, Tamara's 8-year-old daughter, was present and was perplexed. Peyton remarked softly that she didn't look well in her immaculate white dress. He was adjusting his basic button-down shirt, which he had insisted on wearing precisely. That he always wore the same clothing that had brought him years of success, jeans, work boots. Of patronizing glances, my father's crisp, forceful knock on our door. When I answered it after hearing a knock, I saw my parents flanking them in a delegation-like arrangement. "We need to talk," said Aaron, who was holding Tiffany's hand in the back while Tamara and Elijah hovered uncertainly. Without introducing himself, my father responded, "Come in," and I stepped aside as they filed into. I observed them admiring our living room's basic furnishings, handcrafted quilts, and family portraits on the mantel. The same room they had visited numerous times, but now they were evaluating its value in a new way. Assessing its capacity for sacrifice, Peyton added, "Please sit," pointing to the sofa and chairs. Elijah said, "We'd rather stand," his voice taut with hardly controlled desperation. My father said, "This won't take long. Actually, we brought the paperwork to make this easier," he added, taking out a folder. Like he was delivering a court summons and sale papers for the property we already owned, he placed it on our coffee table. I looked at the documents after the appraiser found a buyer. "All you have to do is sign. You had our land valued at my family without consulting us, and we're attempting to be effective." According to my mother, time constraints are a contributing element in this situation. When Peyton gently requested that Elijah refrain from playing games, he responded, "You know exactly. What's at risk includes your parents losing their home, Tamara and I losing everything, and Tiffany losing everything." "What's going on?" Tiffany wondered, pulling on her as she paid for college and her future father. "Nothing on father's sleeve, my love," Tamara answered hastily. "The adults are merely." Speaking of family, my mother's gaze was fixated on me as she spoke. How family members look out for one another, I sensed the same sense of guilt beginning to sneak in. Dominated me all my life, but then I turned to face Peyton, who was observing the situation with a look I couldn't. "Clearly read you right," he remarked abruptly. "Family members should look out for one another." My mother's face. "Oh, I'm so glad you understood. That's why," Peyton said. "I think it's time we have an open discussion about family." He kept strolling to his desk in the corner. Came back to the living room with a big manila folder, the identical one from last night, and inquired, "What's that?" As he settled into his chair, Peyton eyed the folder with suspicion and spoke about our true selves. The true meaning of this patch of dirt is that we don't have time for games. Peyton said, but my father impatiently stated, we need a decision. You'll get one. Let me start by asking you a professional question. How much do you think this farm is worth? Elijah looked dismissively, perhaps 200,000 to 300 if you're lucky, but it's a respectable piece of land. Not hardly great real estate, but an intriguing appraisal. Peyton opened the folder and took out a document that asked, what if? As I previously mentioned, this piece of dirt is actually the headquarters for a $50 company's research and development. When Tamara said, faintly Stone Agricultural, the audience became silent. Peyton carried on the talk, perhaps you've heard of it, your husband. Elijah's face has become white, which isn't possible. Was Peyton pulled? Releasing an additional document with patent number 10,847,392. Peyton Stone is the inventor of a sophisticated precision agriculture irrigation system. Filed 3 years ago, and he presently holds licenses for farms in 12 states. He established the patent number 11203 is located on the coffee table next to the sale documentation. Additionally, agricultural companies are licensed to use the 47 predictive soil analysis software. I have roughly 30 additional documents, so should I continue? Another document joined the first nationwide. All of these patents were created on this useless bit of ground where my mother lives. Was looking at the papers as if they were written in a language I couldn't comprehend, but Peyton responded, it's simple. You were all too busy sneering at us while we were creating something important. However, my father stated every week that I am a farmer with a PhD in agricultural engineering from. At MIT, I also serve as the CEO of a business that is transforming the way that food is produced in this country. Tamara collapsed into the closest chair, saying, this can't be real, but it is. Want to view our quarterly earnings? Peyton produced a financial statement. The page's numbers created Elijah physically flinch. But wait, Pton continued, his tone becoming more abrasive. There's more, Elijah said, adding that you may have heard of Stone Agricultural Technologies. Name. Beyond just hearing it, you advised your clients, including Bethy's parents, to. You lost their retirement funds by betting that we would short our stock. The hush was deafening. Failure. Peyton persisted because you were certain that everything associated with ordinary farmers must be useless. When you risked all on our demise, Elijah's mouth moved like a. Peyton replied, getting up, is that you? With a lovely irony as the fish gasped for oxygen. You lost every dollar you wagered against Stone Agricultural Technologies, not simply their money. When our stock price doubled, it went directly into our pockets. Oh my gosh, Aaron muttered, so when you want us to sell? Peyton went on, you're asking us to give up our life's work in order to save you from your mistakes on our land. To repair the harm you inflicted by placing a wager against our life's work. A man wearing a pricey suit entered via the front entrance. Dropped a briefcase on the table and remarked, I'm sorry, I'm late, as if he owned the place. Traffic was. Peyton calmly stated, I'd like you to meet Leonard Wiseauer. Attorney Leonard grinned at the astonished expressions in the audience, saying, I think you have some inquiries for my client. Leonard carefully dug through his suitcase, extracting papers and... My father brought the selling paperwork and laid them out on our coffee table as if he were preparing for surgery. Appeared pitiful in contrast to the formal court documents that were strewn all over the place. Let's begin with the property in question is owned outright by Stone Agricultural, Leonard stated, adjusting his glasses. Peyton and Bethany Stone control all of Technologies, a company that doesn't lien mortgages and no other types of liens. That's not feasible, my father remarked. Assisted them in making the down payment, which was paid back in full with interest 18 months after Leonard's purchase. He slid a document, and I have the cancelled checks right here. The interruption went smoothly. My father looked at it across the table as if it would bite him again. Any attempt to force a sale through legal channels would be inadvisable because the property is protected, Leonard went on, under a number of agricultural preservation laws, and this research is now funded by a federal grant. Federal funding for protections, my mother muttered. Oh, yes, Peyton said. Our work has drawn a lot of interest from the Department of Agriculture, and we are now creating crop systems that can withstand drought. That might eventually transform farming in climate-affected areas of. Elijah discovered his voice. All of this is quite remarkable, but it doesn't alter the. I spoke up and reiterated the point that we are a family in need of assistance. I took up a framed picture from the mantel and walked over to discuss family. It tasted unpleasant in my lips. I graduated from summa cum laude with a degree in environmental studies on this day. You know what you told me, Dad? My dad's face was set in stone when you said, too. Unfortunately, it's not a legitimate degree like law or business. You claimed that I had wasted 4 years learning about plants and dirt. I took the picture down and grabbed another one on the day of my marriage and our wedding. The love of my life, you apologized to everyone throughout the reception for You made a bad decision by telling Aunt Margaret that you thought I would change my mind before it was too late for Bethany, my mother. I'm not done yet, my hands were shaking constantly, but my voice was solid. 5 years of family get-togethers for every holiday, birthday, and celebration. You made sure I understood exactly where I was, the failure, the disappointment, the person who accepted less Tamara. Mascara running down her cheeks as she sobs, we didn't mean you meant every. I turned to face her straight, and you said, real, calling our lives a joke. You made fun of everything we had constructed and everything we cared about, but life happens on Wall Street, not in our tiny bubble. Didn't realize she was crying, and we were unaware of the company's financial situation. That's precisely what the words were trying to say. Burst out of me, you were unaware of it and didn't give a damn that you witnessed what you wished to encounter 2 individuals you may despise in order to feel better. Leonard wiped his throat. If I may, let's talk about something else. Your family has suffered financial difficulties. Agricultural Technologies has been hurting since he took out another document stone, monitoring the short positions made against our stock, and we must notify the SEC of any substantial trades. If it was feasible, Elijah became even more pallid. The transactions were carried out via Pinnacle Investment Group, where Mr. As a senior partner, Elijah Olson's overall exposure was around $2.3 million, which represents 17 clients and 17 families' retirement accounts. There are 17 families who trusted you with their life savings, Peyton remarked calmly. Elijah, you risked everything on a wager that we wouldn't succeed. Said that 90% of the time, urgently needed agricultural tech ventures fail. Leonard interrupted. Did you visit? The odds were that you would do your schoolwork before jeopardizing other people's money. Did you investigate the company's patents and the leadership team's background? You didn't, did you? You thought farming was useless, just as you thought we were, so you said we might sue my father. Leonard smiled abruptly for the damages and losses, and it wasn't a nice one. I would want to take this opportunity to tell a jury how your son-in-law lost your. The optics of placing a retirement money wager on your daughter's business would be intriguing. What do you want? What do you want from us? Tamara questioned in a weak voice. I glanced around the room at these folks who were my blood relatives. However, my parents, who had raised me for 30 years, had never truly been my family. Feel inferior to my sister, Elijah, who had transformed harshness into an art form. Gambled away their future on his conceit, while Tiffany watched her world collapse in the corner. Simply put, I want you to leave, I stated. I want you to go out that door and never return. Please, Bethany, my mother pleaded, we're so sorry we are family, even though we made faults. No, I replied, and the phrase felt liberating. Family doesn't spend years discrediting one another, they don't disrespect one another the way you did us. Doesn't return only when they're in need, but what about us? Tamara inquired, what about Tiffany? Regarding her future, I gazed at my niece, a helpless youngster ensnared in the. Tiffany's future was never my responsibility due to the wreckage of adult failings. Was yours, and you lost it through gambling. You're going to let us lose everything. After we've done everything for you, my father asked, what have you done for me? I chuckled, and even to my own ears, it sounded harsh. What specifically have you done for me, Dad, except for making me feel inadequate for 30 years? He had no response, and the meeting was finished. Leonard, please stand up and escort our guests out. Wait, Tamara. You'll regret this, Bethany, she whispered in a desperate, high-pitched voice. Ignoring your family, you'll look back on this day when you're elderly and alone and wish you had chosen differently. For the first time in my life, I didn't fear my sister when I looked her in the eyes. You're correct, I mentioned that I will remember this day as the day I. Eventually, people stopped letting you determine my value and left like mourners collecting their demands from a funeral. and their conceit as I watched them drive away through the window, leaving behind nothing but dust clouds. And after they went, I was free of the silence for the first time in 30 years. Felt not empty like the air, but rather different from any quiet I had ever known. After holding its breath, it was eventually able to release it. Leonard carefully packed his bag. "Well," he replied, clicking the latches shut. "That went about as expected. You've done it with precision." I said, "I've seen enough family dynamics to know how these things play, but not exactly like this before." He fixed his tie and said, "When people are desperate, they show you who they are. Your family showed you, and now that Leonard has left, you proceed without them." Peyton and I sat on watching the sun set over our fields, the same fields that belonged to my family, from the front porch. Referred to as worthless dirt just hours ago. Do you think I asked too harshly? Peyton remained silent for a while, tracing patterns with his fingers on the porch railing. "Do you recall what Tamara said?" "I can't forget the day during our wedding when we played in the mud." He turned to face me and said, "This moment will come eventually, maybe not exactly like this, but something like it." They wanted to see somebody they could feel superior to, and they saw us, Beth. However, the question lingered between us like morning. Are they still my family? Erin's name showed on the screen before I could answer my phone. Peyton said she's different from the others, so I should definitely accept that. I said hello to Beth Erin's on the third ring. "I'm very sorry, Erin, let me say this." My voice was heavy with tears. "I never defended you because I knew how they treated you," I told myself. Was remaining neutral, but when a loved one is harmed, there is no neutrality. I closed my eyes and started crying. I was a coward, and now, God Beth, I didn't think you were trapped in the midst. The claims that your mother is acting like you personally and that your father told everyone that you left the family. Ruined their life, and what about tomorrow? She's genuinely resentful. Angry, she keeps claiming that you and Peyton orchestrated the entire situation and that we didn't set anyone up in any way. Simply quit acting like you're less than we are. I know you, even if I should have had Erin's voice cracked, but I didn't protect you. Will you ever? Please pardon me, I was gazing out at our property and the life Peyton and I had created together. Despite everything, the fact that you're phoning me now indicates that I want to see. Just know that I miss my sister, the actual one, not the version, and don't ask for anything. They attempted to persuade you to bring anybody you want to dinner on Sunday, but I swear, leave the drama at home, just me. After I hung up, Peyton arrived over and removed my hand, assuming that any of the others would follow. I thought of how losing my family would have felt a week ago. I'm sitting here with my spouse on property that we own free and clear, and it's frightening me. It felt more like losing old skin in the midst of the success we created together, so I finally replied, "No, it doesn't matter." When I heard a car pull into the driveway the following morning as I was in the yard, my heart leaped, wondering if When I looked up, I noticed a woman I didn't recognize getting out of a little automobile, but my parents had returned to try again. She carried a manila folder and was dressed in jeans and a basic top. She was perhaps 40 years old. She yelled, "Mrs. Stone, I'm Sarah Martinez from the Department of Agriculture, and I wanted to talk to you. You and your spouse regarding your studies on drought resistance." Peyton came out of the barn, cleaning his hands on a towel. "Sarah, you were on time, and the initial findings you provided were amazing," she replied, shaking his hand. "We would like to expedite the expanded trials grants clearance. I requested $2.7 million over 3 years, and Sarah smiled and replied, your husband's effort could alter the way we farm in areas impacted by drought. We're talking about providing food for millions of people. You didn't mention that, but I wanted to make sure before I got your I hope so, he remarked, but we're going to be extremely busy with Sarah and Peyton. Talked about research procedures and schedules. I couldn't help but think about my family coming to visit, demanding that we give up all in order to correct their errors, without understanding that they were requesting that we destroy. Ironically, they had spent years on something that could help feed the world, calling us worthless and inconsequential while we were silently working on anything more significant than their investment portfolios or status symbols. Peyton and I took the same stroll across our fields that evening as the sun turned the sky pink and orange. Hundreds of times, yet suddenly everything felt different. Does he have any regrets? I reflected about my mother's tears, Tamara's despair, and little Tiffany stuck between adulthood and childhood. Failures. I reflected on the years of embarrassment and the ongoing sense of not being adequate, the way they had caused me to question every decision I had made. I replied. And meant it. They made their decision long ago, and they have no regrets, not even about your family. Prior to today, they decided to wager because they thought we were less than we actually were. I halted my movement and turned to face him, both literally and figuratively, against us. I choose us, this life, this job, and the future we're creating together. Peyton grinned. A kind grin that originally made me fall in love with him, which is wonderful because I have huge plans for us. Plans considerably larger than a $50 million business. He indicated the field. Spreading out around us, one seed at a time, we will transform the planet. Beth. Something had changed inside of me as we made our way back to the house. The aspect of me that always sought my family's favor and bore their dissatisfaction like a burden was no longer there. Something stronger and cleaner took its place, and I felt right at home. With the ideal person carrying out the task I was destined to perform, and for the first time in my life, it was everything, plenty, more than enough.